Well, a few years ago, I was giving a tour of the church to the second grade class, and I explained to them the stained glass windows and the Stations of the Cross, the tabernacle, the altar, and then we came to the crucifix. And I asked the children, who can tell me what those four letters stand for? I-N-R-I. And a little second grade girl said, that's where my grandmother lives, in Rhode Island. So today we look at this passage where Jesus is crucified and they hung the sign over his head, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The I, of course, is, in Latin there is no letter J, so the I is used for that letter. So, of course, the first I stands for Jesus. The N stands for Nazareth. That's where Jesus was raised. The R stands for Rex. All the kids have heard of Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? The king of the dinosaurs. The word Rex means king, and then the last I means the Jews. Jesus is Nazareth, King of the Jews. When Pontius Pilate wrote that inscription, he wrote it in three languages, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. This is just always an abbreviation that we see. Today is, of course, the feast day of Christ the King. The thief on the cross says, remember me, Jesus, when you come into your kingdom. He acknowledged the kingship of Jesus Christ. So today is the 100th anniversary of the establishment of this feast day. It was established in 1925, and here we are in 2025. Back 100 years ago, Pope Pius XI saw that society was becoming less and less Christian, more and more secularized. So he said, let us have a feast day in which we proclaim the kingship of Jesus Christ over our hearts, over our families, over our communities, over our country, and over the entire world. So today we read from Luke's Gospel, which is called the Gospel of Mercy, and it's a very powerful, very short gospel, and it begins with everybody mocking Jesus, jeering at him, sneering at him. The rulers, the Jewish rulers, sneered at him. Then the soldiers jeered at him and said, if you're the King of the Jews, come down from that cross. And I love what Bishop Sheen says. He says it would be human to come down. It was divine to just hang there. And then we have the two thieves. It says one of the thieves reviled Jesus as well. It says, if you are the Christ, the Messiah, save yourself and us. Again, Bishop Sheen says that one thief wanted to be taken down. The other thief wanted to be taken up to heaven. And so the other thief, which we call the good thief, tradition calls him Saint Dismas, the patron saint of deathbed conversions, the patron saint of prisoners or those who had lived a sinful way of life. So Saint Dismas rebukes the other criminal. It's interesting that one of the other Gospels mentions that at first, both of the criminals, both of the thieves on the left and the right reviled Jesus. But then the thief on the right had a conversion. Well, what happened what brought about his conversion? I believe it's when he heard Jesus say, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And this thief was just so impressed that Jesus, who had done nothing wrong, after he had been beaten, scourged, crowned with thorns, carried the cross and crucified, said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. I also think the good thief probably saw the Blessed Mother, probably saw Mary, the mother of the Lord, standing there and praying, and was converted by seeing our Blessed Mother. And so it says he rebukes the other thief, who tradition calls him Gesmas, Gesmas. He rebukes Gesmas and says, have you no fear of God? We're going to die very shortly, and we've been condemned justly, but this man has done nothing wrong. And then he turns and says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. This required great faith. Think of the faith of Saint Dismas, the faith of Dismas, because, he didn't see Jesus crowned with a crown of gold. He saw him crowned with a crown of thorns. He didn't see Jesus holding a royal scepter. He saw Jesus nailed with nails in his hands and feet. He didn't see Jesus wearing royal robes or a cope. He saw him covered in blood. He didn't see Jesus sitting on a marble or gold throne. He saw Jesus on the throne of the cross. And yet he had faith. He saw through this, and he saw that Jesus truly was a king. And he said, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." So we see this good thief showed repentance for his sins, sorrow for his sins. He confessed his guilt. He said that he was guilty of what he had done, and that what he was enduring was the just punishment for what he deserved. And he was willing to bear his sufferings patiently. So notice he did many of the works of mercy. He prayed, he corrected a sinner, the bad thief, and he bore his sufferings patiently. And he offered up his sufferings. And so, because of that, he received mercy and forgiveness for calling Christ King. And the most comforting words in the whole Bible is, Jesus said, "I assure you, this day you'll be with me in paradise." So that's why he's the patron saint of last-minute conversions to Christ, that he was saved, because Jesus promised that he would take him into paradise. So maybe there's people in your life that you're worried about. Maybe they don't go to church, they don't pray, they maybe have stopped, worshiping the Lord. Keep praying for them. Don't give up. Don't stop praying for their conversion. Pray the Chaplet of Divine Mercy for them. Pray the Rosary for them, because it only took this one prayer of the good thief to be saved. Maybe that was his first time he ever prayed in his life. It certainly was his last prayer. It might have been his first prayer. It might have been his only prayer. That one prayer, and he received Jesus' forgiveness. And I would recommend you read the book called The Life of Christ by Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. Bishop Sheen wrote 100 books during his lifetime. My mom was actually his secretary for about a year in the 1940s. But Bishop Sheen wrote the book called The Life of Christ. And in that book, he makes a couple last interesting points about this event. He says that Jesus, with the thief on his right and the thief on his left, represents the last judgment. That Jesus will be the judge, he'll be in the center, and ultimately there will be two divisions of humanity, those on his right and those on his left, the saved and the lost, the sheep and the goats. So these two thieves were, one represents someone who was saved, the other one represents someone who was lost. And then the bishop mentions that suffering can make somebody better or can make them bitter. The bad thief used his sufferings and blamed God and would not accept personal responsibility, and he used his sufferings and it led him away from God. It was his stumbling block. Whereas the good thief united his sufferings and offered them up and was willing to accept them as a just punishment for his sins, and because of that, his suffering made him a better person. It was his stepping stone to God. So remember that whenever you see those three crosses of Jesus' cross and the two crosses on either side, how do you deal with suffering? Are you allowing it to bring you closer to God, or using it as an excuse to lead us away from God? And so I'll just end with this couple sentences from St. John Chrysostom. Way back in the 400s, wrote this, and he makes a good point, is that this thief was so good, he even stole heaven. He stole paradise at the last minute, so he was really a thief to the end. St. Chrysostom says, this robber stole paradise. No one before him ever received such a promise. Not Abraham or Isaac or Jacob or Moses or the prophets or the apostles. This thief pressed in before all others, but his faith also surpassed theirs. He saw Jesus tormented and adored him as if he were in glory. He saw him nailed to a cross and petitioned him as if he were enthroned. He saw him condemned and asked a favor of him as of a king. O admirable thief, thou didst see a crucified man, but thou didst proclaim God.